A federal judge in Louisiana has issued an order that temporarily blocks a mandate to force healthcare workers nationwide to be vaccinated against the coronavirus. The Ninth Circuit Federal Appeals Court has upheld California's ban on gun magazines that hold more than 10 bullets. An appeal to the Supreme Court likely. America is listening to Fox News.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Santa's come in and things are looking up. Bank Pacific has rolled out Rudolph's favorite My Christmas loan with an annual percentage interest rate as low as 3.99% and up to $50,000. And with the new Bank Pacific contactless Visa debit card, you can have the flexibility of using your money when you want to, where you want to. My Christmas Loan contactless Visa debit card. Let's make Christmas merrier this year. Equal opportunity lender. Credit conditions apply. Merry Christmas from Bank Pacific.
A new survey says Americans' faith in the country's military has fallen sharply.
A new national defense survey conducted by the Ronald Reagan Institute found that for the first time, a minority of Americans, only 45%, have a great deal of trust in the U.S. military, down 25% in the past 3 years. Confidence in the military among Republicans fell by 34 points to 53%. The declining trust in the military is occurring more rapidly than other institutions. Only 42% believe the U.S. can win a war overseas. Fox News was given an exclusive look at the survey's findings, which saw a sea change in attitude about the threat posed by China. Those surveyed expressed concerns about U.S. leadership in the world and a possible war in space.
Fox's Jennifer Griffin at the Pentagon. Jury selection resumes in the morning in the trial of former suburban Minneapolis police officer Kim Potter, charged in the death of Daunte Wright last year. Potter has said she meant to tase Wright during a traffic stop, but mistakenly grabbed her gun instead. And testimony will continue in the trial of actor Jussie Smollett, accused of faking a hate crime against himself. In testimony Tuesday, a Chicago police investigator said two brothers involved in the case told them Smollett orchestrated the hoax and even ran a trial run. A cable news host is off the air indefinitely amid ethics questions.
CNN saying it suspended Chris Cuomo indefinitely after learning about the great lengths he went to help his older brother, former Democratic New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, handle a sexual harassment scandal. Cuomo previously acknowledged offering his brother advice, but transcripts of testimony in a sexual harassment investigation released Monday show the younger Cuomo's involvement went much deeper. Chris Cuomo pressed sources for information on his brother's accusers and was active in preparing then-Governor Cuomo's response to the allegations. Andrew Cuomo resigned in August after investigators working for the state attorney general's office concluded he sexually harassed nearly a dozen women. Steve Rappaport, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Afre, my name is Kiona Rivera, student at the University of Guam and recent recipient of the G is for Giving Scholarship. This holiday season, I'm encouraging our island community to support the G is for Giving campaign. Your generous contribution not only support programs at the university, but also helps students like me reach our academic goals. For more information on how you can help shape the future leaders of our island, call the UOG Endowment Foundation at 671-735-2957 or visit their website at give.uog.edu.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
As we celebrate this holiday season, we reflect on the hardships of the past 2 years and remain grateful for the family and friends who share our journey and lighten our burdens. The team at Security Title is proud of the work we do to support ourselves and our families, to serve and care for our customers, and to give back to our community. May this season of joy and the new year bring happiness, good health, and prosperity to you and yours. Merry Christmas from all of us at Security Title.
handle.
Guam Auto Spot has the best selection in Buick, GMC, Mitsubishi, and used cars like the 2021 Mitsubishi Mirage starting at $127 per paycheck. 0 down. Call 671-478-AUTO to take a test drive or get pre-approved online at GuamAutospot.com.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
Now, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals in California apparently has not been listening to Tall Tales much lately.
Not at all.
Yeah. So I've got a story here out of the Bearing Arms website. Ninth Circuit upholds California magazine ban. They're not talking about Life or Look or Newsweek magazine.
Reader's Digest.
Yeah. And here's what they say. A divided en banc panel of judges in the Ninth Circuit upheld a California ban on ammunition magazines that can hold more than 10 rounds, declaring that the law interferes only minimally with the core right of self-defense while also saving lives. The decision in Duncan v. Bonta wasn't exactly unexpected, given the anti-gun majority on the Ninth Circuit. And the head of the California Rifle and Pistol Association says an appeal to the Supreme Court is forthcoming. And given the reasoning used by the court, the prospects of SCOTUS accepting the case are probably higher than normal. The Ninth Circuit declared in its opinion that the law only required intermediate scrutiny. Now, we've talked before in terms of 3 levels of scrutiny: strict scrutiny, intermediate scrutiny, and reasonable state purpose. The strict scrutiny is almost impossible to get by. Any statute that interferes with a fundamental right, quote unquote, is subject to strict scrutiny, and it's really hard for a statute to get past that test. Intermediate scrutiny, not so much. Reasonable state purpose, not at all. The Ninth Circuit, Ninth Circuit Judge Lawrence Van Dyke took his colleagues to task for trying to excuse the way the infringement of a constitutional right, and declared that until the Supreme Court speaks, the Ninth Circuit is going to continue to treat the right to keep and bear arms as a privilege to be doled out by the state. This case is par for the course, Van Dyke says. The majority emphasizes the statistical rarity of law-abiding citizens' need to fire more than an average of 2.2 shots in self-defense, but glosses over the statistical rarity of the harm that California points to as supporting its magazine ban. Instead of requiring the government to make an actual heightened showing, it heavily weights the government's claim that guns holding more than 10 rounds are dangerous. Of course they are. All guns are. Against a self-defense interest that the majority discounts to effectively nothing. Once again, our court flouts the Supreme Court's exhortation against such freestanding interest-balancing approach to the Second Amendment. So the Supreme Court has said before, don't you guys get into these balancing tests when the balance is struck by your own personal preferences. That's what he's saying. So this is not good news, and as the writer of the article said, not surprised. You remember the state of Hawaii, the district court in Hawaii said that people had a right to bear arms on the streets of Honolulu. Went to the Ninth Circuit reversed. So this is what we come to expect from our own circuit, the Ninth Circuit. Okay, so we go from there to Zemi Ikotning. And I have a news release here from PMSNBC. It reads like this. Chuck Todd announces Meet the Press to change name to Zemi Ikotny. There you go. So I've got an article here. Chuck Todd gets schooled after tying a pro-life vaccine argument on trying a pro-life vaccine argument on Mississippi Governor Tate Reeves. So there's some dialogue in here that I think is pretty interesting. Well, when last we left you with Chuck Todd, the NBC's news anchor was letting the cat out of the bag on today's Sunday program regarding the real reason behind the mainstream media's obsession with the new Omicron Wuhan virus variant, whether or not it would hurt Joe Biden and whether other Democrats politically in the 2022 midterms. In other words, their concern with this new virus is only that. Is this going to hurt Joe Biden? Is it going to hurt Is it going to hurt Democrats in the midterms?
Walking hurts Joe Biden.
Yeah. Because if we do find out that certainly vaccinated individuals are in much better shape with this new variant than unvaccinated individuals, does the president use this as an opportunity to basically use the bully pulpit, push back at all this vaccine information because that's out there, and grab a hold of this? Chuck Todd frantically wondered, because while social spending bill and all the other political problems, none of them can be solved and Wuhan is left behind. And I think this is a reminder he needs to be more front and center on the Wuhan virus response than he's been so far. And then there's a dialogue between Tate Reeves, the governor of Mississippi, and Chuck Todd. It goes like this. Chuck Todd, freedom and individual liberty. Why should the state of Mississippi tell a woman that what she should do with... This is classic. This is classic. Why should the state of Mississippi tell a woman what they should do with their body? Chuck Todd. Aren't you glad we've got Zemi Ikotny? Why shouldn't they have that individual freedom on their body, particularly in the first 20 weeks? And the governor of Mississippi comes back and says, well, this is a prime example. And the far left loves to scream, my body, my choice. And what I would submit to you, Chuck, is they absolutely ignore the fact that in getting an abortion, there's an actual killing of an innocent unborn child that's in the womb.
Facts.
Here's what we know about babies that are 15 weeks old. We know that they have a heartbeat. We know that those babies at 15 weeks actually can open and close their hands. We know that they have developing lungs. And we know that those babies at 15 weeks can feel pain. So when you talk, the difference between vaccine mandates and abortions is vaccines allow you to protect yourself. Abortions actually go in and kill other American babies. And let's put this in perspective, Chuck.
Wow.
Yeah.
Was his jaw on the ground, or was he just sitting there smugly?
Yeah, I suppose. So I tease from time to time about Zemi Ikotny, which is our bilingual backwards play on words that actually we mean to use to mean meet the press, compared to Chuck Todd, Mr. Lefty, right? Chuck Todd was actually born alive, but a strange thing happened. He was born with two left hands. He can't seem to overcome it. Okay, let's go from there to the card. Let's see that. Yeah, here's what we got on from PDN. Our view as the world reacts to Omicron. Wait a minute, I got the right ones here. I don't think I do. I better go. You got the papers there, Jose? Let me borrow your papers. I think I grabbed the wrong copy. Hang on just a second while our news agent, what they call a news agent in Australia, brings in the papers. Thanks, Jose.
Extra. Read all about it.
Okay. Hot off the press. Very good. Thanks, Jose. Yeah. Okay, yeah. I could have done probably without the Daily News editorial. It's titled Caution. Take measure to protect against criminals during holidays. You know, it's another one of those where you look at it and you see black ink constituting words on paper, filling the news hole but saying absolutely nothing.
Did they say anything about high-capacity magazines?
Not a word. Not a drop. Okay, now the Post. The Post is calling in an artillery strike on itself. Here it goes. Questions about private hospitals' financial commitments to the public need answers. Guam's GRMC is part of the network hospital under Philippine-based Medical City, which saw Guam as a doorstep into the hospital business in the United States and globally. On Tuesday, Guam Healthcare Development, Inc., which owns GRMC, announced it has reached an agreement to sell the Guam private hospital facility to Blue Continent Healthcare, Guam Medical City, or BCG. Now, I'm surprised that healthcare folks would choose that set of initials, BCG. BCG describes the bacillus that causes tuberculosis. Yeah. And about 100 years ago, by accident, it was discovered that imposition of BCG into the bladder of a woman with bladder cancer will cure the cancer.
Oh, by accident.
Yeah, I suppose, but they've been using it and it works. So I would suspect then that they're not going to be really strong on nephrology and cancer here when the new guys take over, if they're choosing BCG as their initials. The buyer was registered as a limited liability company in Delaware, just as July, and is apparently buying the private hospital as a nonprofit. Now, Delaware has made its bones as a haven for corporations, as a place to incorporate. They have the most user-friendly corporation laws of any of the states. They probably have had to close up on some of their confidentiality because of various kinds of pressure. But you could buy what's called a shelf corporation in Delaware for a relatively low price and register it in Delaware, and no one would really be able to find out who's behind it. A shelf corporation means this. A lawyer opens up 25 corporations in his office, and he's got 3 file clerks as his directors and shareholders and whatever. So you want to come in and buy a shelf corporation, he's got the papers ready for you to sign where you take over for those 3 employees of his. He files the papers, or he's already filed the papers, so no one really knows who owns the corporation. I think that Delaware has tightened up a little bit, but Delaware is a favorite place for companies to incorporate. GRMC's owner characterized the transaction as an agreement to sell its physical assets and operations to BCG. GRMC's owner announced its agreement to sell the private hospital the same day the Guam Economic Development Authority held a public hearing on the proposed $600 million loan for the acquisition of the hospital. Guam will not be on the hook for the loan, according to GITA, but Governor Leon Guerrero is being asked to certify that the hospital serves a public need so that the bond lenders will get federal tax exemption from the proceeds of their investment. Let me stop there for a second. This is another advantage of our anomalous state within the American family. The obligations of a state are triple tax-free. No state tax, no local tax, no federal tax. So this makes our bonds pretty attractive to certain kinds of investors. And that's what BCG is looking for. BCG is not a government agency, but apparently the government can lend its tax-free status to a private bond issuer if the government certifies that the purpose of the bond is for a public purpose. And we don't do very well with public purposes here. So if I stop talking right there, you'd say, what are they going to do? Give the hospital back to the original owners? Which is our definition of a public purpose, right? The buyer will hire the hospital's current owner to provide the staff for the hospital, according to the press release from GRMC. So hopefully this means jobs for Guam residents employed at the private hospital are secure for now. While GRMC is a private entity, this sale or pending sale does leave public interest questions unanswered. Once GRMC is sold to the nonprofit, what happens to the financial commitments to GRMC made to the government of Guam and to Guam's community in exchange for receiving tax abatements? In 2015, to help out with more than $240 million investment to develop the private hospital, the government of Guam gave the private hospital generous tax abatements, the so-called GITA qualifying certificate, income tax, property tax, GRT. Under GITA's qualifying certificate program, then Governor Eddie Calvo granted $170 million in tax breaks to GRMC's Philippine-based investors over 20 years. The tax breaks under the qualifying certificate program also require GRMC to make $25 million in public contributions staggered over the 20-year term of the qualifying certificate. In addition, the QC also requires GRMC to treat indigent patients, GRMC stated in 2015. Under the terms of the QC, 75% of all GRMC employees must be U.S. citizens or U.S. residents. We asked GITA what will happen to these commitments GRMC made. These commitments have about 15 years to go. We're waiting for answers. Well, Guam Daily Post, you shouldn't be waiting for, we can wait for answers. You are the ones that are supposed to go out and get these answers. So when you say there are questions that need answers, go get them.
They're waiting for a press release, Bob.
Yeah, they're waiting for a press release from, yeah. Yeah, by the way, in the famous battle between Brown and Rory, there were no press releases today, so all quiet on the Western Front. I expect there will be dueling press releases again tomorrow. Okay, so that's the editorial. The makings of a really good editorial are here. They dug into it. But did they interview anybody from BCG? Did they interview Mike Cruz, the current general manager of the hospital? Did they talk to anybody in the medical community?
Nope.
No, they didn't. But they just ran their story and ran their editorial. Okay, let's go next to the card. Let's take a short break, huh, Jose?
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Hapude, konnichiwa,
Patwa,
Ciao! Enter for a chance to win the 76 Circle K World Cuisine Giveaway. Be one of 3 lucky winners to win a passport of free food from around the world at over 15 different local restaurants. Just stop by any 76 Circle K, purchase $35 or more in fuel to get an entry form. Drive by today and taste the world with 76 Circle K's World Cuisine Giveaway. Visit 76circlekguam.com for more details. Some conditions apply. Circle K, take it easy.
Portions of the program brought to you by Nissan. Choose your favorite Nissan, and there's an abundance of Nissan automobiles to choose from. Rogues, Rogue Sports, Muranos, Kicks, Sentras, Leafs, Rogues, and then start talking about the deal they want to put together for you. Enjoy 0% APR, or your first 3 payments are on them. Just sign and drive away. Inventory limited, so don't wait. See Nissan Guam first. Wait, there's the fine print. I got to read the thing in fine print ease. On approved credit, 3 payments calculated, 5% APR, 60 months term, and based on the actual selling price of the vehicle only, not including down payment or any aftermarket products or accessories. See Nissan Guam for full details.
And now back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the one radio show politicians don't want you to listen to. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
So here we are back on Tall Tales after a short break here, still in the first half of Tall Tales. I've got a call from William, Utah. I like that a lot better. His name is a little bit, kind of sticks to my tongue. Let's rename him William, Utah, okay?
Sounds good.
Yeah, so William, Utah, you probably want to talk about GRMC, right?
Correct.
Well, let me tell you something. The first item on the card today is Therese Howe versus Paul Zerzan. You know, when I've got a really hot issue where people are really fighting it out, it tends to stay on top of the card for a while. I can't think of anything more important than red rice versus orange rice. But right below that, the second item on the card is Mudge versus GRMC. So you might want to hang on until after I finish that item on the card, and then we'll talk a little bit, okay?
Okay, yeah, I'll tell you what, I'll just hang up and listen to the show, and I'll just call back in.
That's a good idea, William. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, so here's what I got on the card. I've got Therese Howe versus Paul Zerzan, which is an update on Jim Salmon versus Paul Zerzan.
Because we were waiting for one.
Yeah, which is actually an update, I suppose, on Hope Cristobal versus Paul Zerzan. Yeah. I wonder if Therese and Jim see Hope Cristobal as some sort of a heroine for really putting Paul in his place, right? And then after that, I've got Mika versus Us. Yeah, this would be Mika Brzezinski from Morning Joe. Used to be one of my favorite shows on TV. I can't stand it anymore.
Yeah, I don't know what happened to him.
Well,
they got together. That's what happened.
That's exactly what happened to him. Yeah, I thought Joe had better sense than that, but here we go. And I've got Virginia versus Guam. Not a lady named Virginia, but a state. And then I've got Glencoe versus Kenosha and Waukesha versus Kenosha. And and then we kind of go back into the left, like the post that I read yesterday that everybody over 16 in Kenosha had a duty to come out and defend the businesses. Okay, so Therese Howe versus Paul Zerzan. Oh, shucks, did I grab the wrong article again? I think I did. Yeah, it's in the paper. Glad you bring these papers with you, Jose. I sent it to you and brought the wrong one in. Yeah. Okay, here it is. The title of Therese Howe's article in the Daily News is "Readers to Zerzan, quote, leave our red rice alone." Longtime educator Paul Zerzan, a prolific writer of letters to the editor, is once again stirring the pot. This time, one of the island's most beloved pots. Now, here we go. I don't know if this is another example of the left taking over, or Therese Howe trying to be like the host of Tall Tales without a horn. He says, this time one of the island's most beloved pots, and the people of Guam are not having it. In a letter published Friday, Zerzan objected to calling red rice by that name, proposing instead to call it by the hue he sees most often, orange rice. Some readers on social media question why the PDN was even entertaining the topic when there are more pressing issues at hand. But it surely touched a nerve. Posts on the topic reached more than 100,000 accounts and generated about 1,000 comments. The majority vehemently rejected the proposal, such as Cecile Chargalov's comment on a post on the group 671 Guam Recipes. Why change traditions? It's like, here we go again. Being invaded and changing what is naturally ours to what they think it should be because they don't like it.
Naturally whose?
Ours.
Okay,
Yeah.
ours.
Yeah, we gotta get a little CRT in here, even if it's red rice. I don't care if it's not the color of their liking or if it's not dark enough for them. Just leave what is a traditional thing to be just that, tradition. Others offered an explanation for the name. In the old days, as it is now, there's no Chamorro word for orange. That's true. Kung tongo no haftay maramasangan I palabra orange, gifino Chamorro, Jose?
None.
Kolot kahit. Kolot kahit, color of an orange. Yeah. So
Sounds like an oxymoron.
It does. Yeah. Therefore, it was known as Hinexa agaga, red rice, said Seal Montague, founder of the Facebook group 671 Guam Recipes. Well, that's interesting. That's adding something to the mix without a little bit of xenophobia. Like from, what was her name here?
See, that argument makes sense.
It does. Yeah, like Cecile Chargalov's xenophobic argument, basically.
Yeah,
And
I had this thing with it's our tradition.
Our tradition.
Who is our?
And who is they?
Who is they?
We know.
Whose tradition?
Yeah. In an interview, Zerzan said he was prompted to write the letter following a Thanksgiving luncheon he attended last week. He said he was shocked after 30 years of living on Guam to realize that red rice isn't actually that color. Once you see that it's orange, you really can't bring yourself to call it red.
Okay, here's a real controversy.
Yeah.
Nobody in the States except for us would bring red rice to Thanksgiving. That's it.
That's true. Yeah, and I confess, I'll eat my share of red rice. I like red rice, but I never have red rice at Thanksgiving.
There's the real outrage.
Yeah. Really. And then we've got, so I think the truth is more important than tradition. That's what Zerzan said. The truth is more important than tradition. The 69-year-old former science teacher did admit, however, that he is intentionally provocative with his letters. Well, good for you, Paul. That's great. However, I thought that was my job, but I can always use a little help. After his wife, Amy, died a year ago, I really have no place to communicate, Zerzan said. I crave attention, even if it's negative, he said, chuckling. I think it's a departure from what we've been talking about in the news lately. You know, we've been arguing about coronavirus or masks, all these other things. I thought it would be entertaining.
Indeed.
Yeah. You know, you have to appreciate the guy. I really appreciate him. He writes some really interesting stuff in the paper, and this is classic Paul Zerzan, kind of allowing people to make fun of themselves. That's what they're doing. Judging from the response, however, the people were not amused.
But they were engaged.
Uh-huh. The only thing Chamorros are more protective of than family is our food. Red rice is red regardless of the reddish-orange hue, said Paula Lujan Kaneni, Chamorro cookbook author and founder of Guam Mama Cooks. So, you know, this reminds me of the man on the street interviews that you see on TV all the time. And here's the dirty little secret of the man on the street interviews, right? Water's World being the classic example on Fox News, and a lot of stations have done it. I can't remember who the interviewer was. It's probably somebody like Geraldo Rivera, interviewed a member of the House of Representatives just walking out of one of the House office buildings, like the Rayburn building or the Longworth building. And he walks up to him, sticks a microphone in his face, and says something like, "Are you ready to send your son to Kuwait?" And the congressman, he was just, what? My son? How do you know I have, and that was kind of the interview. The point was to show that here's a U.S. congressman, when you asked him a really important question, couldn't even begin to answer it. And Water's World, I like Water's World. I think it's really funny because he'll go to a college campus and he'll approach a co-ed, a young lady or a young gentleman student, and he'll ask a question like, which of the two continents in the Western Hemisphere is farther south? Europe? Which came first, World War I or World War II? The Civil War? You know, these people come up with just incredibly dumb answers. And you're thinking, boy, the people that go to that school are really dumb. But the thing that you don't know is that he may have had to interview 25 people to get the ones that he's looking for.
Exactly.
And that's the dirty little secret about man on the street interviews. And when I read this, I had the same idea. You know, there are a lot of Facebook posts. How long did Therese Howe have to dig through those Facebook posts till she found the ones that she wanted that fit her agenda? This to me is a classic case of what we're dealing with. And I mentioned this when I first brought the Zerzan column to everyone's attention. It is a good tool to engage in some analysis and some critical thinking. So Therese Howe has an agenda here, and the agenda at the end is the only thing Chamorros are more protective of than family is our food, right? So she's got her agenda. She found the quotes that fit into her agenda. Paul Zerzan, of course, is his usual kind of breezy self, kind of telling her, you know, I didn't take this so seriously. Why are you taking it so seriously? But she sees it as a great tool to advance the, I'm not going to use the word separatist cause, but the Chamorro cause here, us and them, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So harmless in this context, but in the context that we see this agenda journalism every single day, including from this very newspaper, it is very dangerous.
Look how it affected the Ninth Circuit. You know, high-capacity magazines are dangerous.
Exactly.
However, handgun deaths are way above on the chart
Exactly.
of murders.
Yeah.
But they don't touch that.
No, it's not important. It doesn't fit the agenda. So, Daily News, my suggestion is that you counsel Therese Howe, and you really want to be careful about inserting your own agenda into your news story. I don't think anybody will pay any attention to that.
That was a news story or
It's a news
column
story.
editorial?
No, it's a news story.
Oh, that should have been an editorial.
Yeah. Well, it should have been in the comic strips, where it should have been. Okay, then we've got GRMC confirmed sale proceeds raised on related $600 million bond. Elected officials scrutinized a $600 million bond for the island's private hospital as Guam Regional Medical City's current owners confirmed the proposed debt is tied to an approved sale agreement to a nonprofit organization. This would have been a really good place to tell us a little bit about the nonprofit organization. Who are the incorporators? We know it's incorporated in Delaware. A subsidiary of the hospital's Philippine-based owner announced it will sell its physical assets and operations to the organization, which will rename the hospital Blue Continent Health Care Guam Medical City, or BCG. The buyer will hire the hospital's current owner to provide the staff for the hospital, according to a press release from GRMC. Now, Peter Scrow, who is probably our Guam guru on hospital financing, said that what this really amounts to is a sale and leaseback. And it's kind of what you could see that. We'll sell you the hospital and we'll lease it back from you. But the news story says, we'll hire you to operate the hospital. This is the kind of place where we need a sharp reporter to really dig in. What do you mean by lease back? Or what do you mean by operate the hospital? The buyer will hire the hospital's current owner to provide the staff for the hospital, according to a press release from GRMC. Now notice it says staff. Staff.
Not administration.
That doesn't say, it kind of leaves that open, doesn't it? This will comprise of some of the same outstanding cadre of dedicated and committed staff who currently attend to the Guam community's acute care needs, according to Guam Healthcare Development, Inc., GRMC's current owner. Putting a happy face on the thing, right? BCG's Guam Medical City will be referred to, Blue Continent Healthcare Guam Medical City will be referred to as BCG. BCG plans to continue with the hospital's ongoing strategic expansion, including increasing its inpatient bed capacity from 136 to 186 beds and contributing its healthcare infrastructure to better serve the key strategic nations in the Blue Continent, including the territory of Guam, CNMI, Federated States of Micronesia, Marshalls, and Palau. Now, if I were to stand back and look at this and think about it a little bit, this is what I might be thinking of. GRMC needs to borrow some money. The corporation that owns GRMC needs to borrow some money. If you can, the way that large corporations borrow money is they don't go down to sign a promissory note at the bank. They issue bonds. And of course, your bonds are more marketable if they're tax-free. And I explained the tax-free aspects a little earlier on, right? So because BCG is not a government entity, it can't issue tax-free bonds. But if the government of Guam certifies that the bond issue is for a public purpose, then they can. So my suspicious mind is asking, is this just a really interesting way to borrow money to finance GRMC, set up this nonprofit incorporated in Delaware, sell the hospital to the nonprofit, let the nonprofit issue $600 million worth of bonds, infuse that capital into GRMC, keep the same people on board, and keep the ship afloat. Now, the next sentence in the article here says, Dr. Gilbert Mudge, rhymes with fudge, BCG chairman, states in the press release, now this is the Post, not Pacific News Center, so that's why we know he said it in a press release. The new foundation's ownership of the hospital will ensure better access to funding resources and will cement BCG's position as the main provider for advanced clinical care, including cardiovascular, neuroscience, diabetes, cancer, dialysis, rehabilitation, and skilled nursing services in the Blue Continent. So I'm going to stop here again. Now, this is some information that I got from a source. Yeah, I have a source. Someone in the medical community who has always been reliable. And my source tells me that Dr. Mike Cruz and Mr. Francis Santos are no longer working at GRMC. Yeah, the finance officer and the GM are no longer there. Going back a little earlier.
How much of the deal is set in ink?
Dr. Gilbert Mudge, BCG chairman. I have a feeling we'll be hearing a lot more of Dr. Gilbert Mudge. Now that's from a source. I think it rises above the level of rumor or gossip. And it's the kind of thing that, once again, there are a lot of questions that need to be answered here, right? Yeah. And, of course, had anybody taken the time to interview the current personnel at GRMC and ask Dr. Mudge who's going to run the hospital, and, you know, maybe my source wouldn't have had, my source would have been somewhat defanged, as the saying goes. By having Guam serve as the hub and center of healthcare services in the region, and by developing healthcare infrastructure for the island nations within the Blue Continent, we will move forward as a stronger, mission-driven organization, said GRMC's President and Chief Executive Officer, Dr. Michael Cruz. The announcement, however, came hours after a public hearing Tuesday on the proposals organized by GITA to gather testimony on the bond issuance. I'm going to stop there. The rest, I don't think is really rare. Michelson Nichols got himself some earned media. I think that's about it. I think the big story here is the fact that, the GRMC is going to be under new ownership, and the particulars of the new ownership aren't that clear. I suspect that, that there weren't some people sitting around in Delaware saying, Delaware is really a great state. Our president's from Delaware. Why don't we get a bunch of people together and set up a nonprofit and buy a hospital somewhere? How about Guam? These things just don't happen.
Nobody knows about Guam.
Yeah, these things just don't happen spontaneously. Some heavy-duty players with some heavy-duty money put this together, and they know exactly where it's going. We don't, and none of our foreign news medias even seem to care about where it's going. Now, I care about it for two reasons, actually three reasons. One, the thing about always trying to set some standards for the media to go out and actually gather news instead of printing press releases is one. Second, the better the health care on the island, the happier the people who live on the island are going to be. And three, given the fact that I'm superannuated, good hospital care is really important to me. And I've seen enough of GRMC to know that I liked what I saw. I don't want to see it go down the tubes. All right, let's take a short break, and we'll hope that William, Utah, will give us a buzz now about GRMC.
Santa's coming and things are looking up. Bank Pacific has rolled out Rudolph's favorite My Christmas loan with an annual percentage interest rate as low as 3.99% and up to $50,000. And with the new Bank Pacific contactless Visa debit card, you can have the flexibility of using your money when you want to, where you want to. My Christmas Loan contactless Visa debit card. Let's make Christmas merrier this year. Equal opportunity lender. Credit conditions apply. Merry Christmas from Bank Pacific.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus tenactac, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tuman location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
You know, Jose, I used to say our phone number on the air quite often. I never do it anymore, and I noticed one of the posters wants to know what our number is. It's area code 671-888-8255. 888-TALK.
You are correct.
Yeah, Daniel Della. So give us a buzz, Daniel. 888-TALK. And let me see, I suspect this is probably a call from Utah here. Let me just check the stack. Yeah, it's William, Utah. Good afternoon, William, Utah.
Good afternoon, Tall Tales.
So what time is it in Salt Lake City right now?
It's going on midnight.
Oh, you're a dedicated tailgater, William. I appreciate that. So what can you tell me about the hospital?
Well, as you recall, a couple of weeks ago, you had a 20-round bout that went on about the Eagles Field and GMH and what was going to happen with that property, and some insights. And some callers called in and had some good insights into the dealings with GMH and building of the new hospital. And I called in at the end of your show and gave you my perspective, which was outside of the box, saying that.
But you may very well have been right. Go ahead.
Saying that I thought that GRMC was going to end up becoming the new GMH, and that GRMC is, that there was not going to be a new hospital built at all, and that it ended up being GRMC will end up becoming GMH. Well, maybe not in name, but yeah, I think I might have been onto something there. First of all, I want to ask you a question. Are you familiar with GMH and what their tax status actually is? Are they a 501c3?
Are you talking GMH or GRMC?
GMH.
GMH is a government entity. It's a
correct.
So it basically has no tax status at all. It's a government entity.
Well, it actually does have one. It does have a status. It has that. It has the TEFRA status, the TEFRA, which is the Tax Equity and Fiscal Responsibility Act of 1982, which is the same act that they're wanting to use for qualifying, I guess it's not GRMC anymore. It's the new name of the hospital as a not-for-profit. So, in essence, what it sounds like what they're wanting to do is they're wanting to create an exact same setup at GRMC as what's already there at GMH. because under the rules of, well, there's a couple of things. I did do some research. The not-for-profit that you're talking about, that's in Delaware. So under the 501c3, which is under the Affordable Care Act, and it's 501R, the hospital to be licensed as a not-for-profit, it has to be located in one of the 50 states or the District of Columbia, and that's in the writing. It flat out says that it's Section 501R of the Affordable Care Act under the 501c3 that the hospital has to be located in a state or in the District of Columbia. So I'm not exactly sure how they're going to get a not-for-profit in Delaware to qualify a hospital physically not located in a state, because it flat out states that it has to be located in a state to be qualified as a 501c3. So going back to where they're going, it looks to me like they're going to try to get it qualified under the Tax Equity and Fiscal Responsibility Act of 1982 as a not-for-profit, which does cover hospitals, but the rules are a lot more stringent for the TEFRA than they are for the 501. I mean, a lot tougher. And what I'm guessing is back when they first got qualified as a TEFRA hospital, when GMH did, because under the rules, from what I'm reading, it can't be a hospital that's got more than 50 beds, and it has to be a rural area, and there has to be a certain percentage. It's like 70% of the patients have to be indigent patients or under Medicaid. There's all kinds of rules that apply, and there's all kinds of deductions. Like even in radiology, it cuts down their reimbursement from 100% to 80%.
What makes you think that that TEFRA is applicable to what BCG is trying to do?
I read it in an article. It's in the newspaper. It says that they're going to get the governor to qualify the status under. Let me find it here. Where was that at? They're going to qualify. I think it was in the Post.
I just read the Post article. Yeah, I've read all the articles, and I didn't see anything. You know, in fact, I was critical of the Post of being so loose in their definition of this, in a sense, borrowing of the tax-free status by BCG. You know what? We're right up against the break. I hate to keep putting you off, William, but you want to call back after the big halftime show? I'd like to talk to you more about this.
Yeah, I'll find the article. They did talk about TEFRA. That's what they want to get the governor to qualify the bond under.
Okay. Call us back.
Okay. All right.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
New travel restrictions likely. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. As the White House prepares to outline Thursday its battle plans for the Omicron variant of the coronavirus, the Centers for Disease Control confirming it's working on new testing requirements for air travel to the U.S.
A revised order would mean all international travelers would have to be tested for COVID just 1 day prior to their departure for the United States. Under current guidelines, vaccinated travelers must receive a negative test no more than 3 days before heading to the U.S. The Washington Post reports another controversial proposal may mean all international travelers, including U.S. citizens, would have to self-quarantine for 7 days, even if they produced a negative test.
Fox's Sean Landshield, it may be weeks before researchers can say if the new variant is more dangerous than others. Inflation will linger for months at least, according to the chairman of the Federal Reserve Board.
We are committed to our price stability goal. We will use our tools both to support the economy and a strong labor market and to prevent higher inflation from becoming entrenched.
Jerome Powell says higher prices for food, housing, and transportation will remain well into the new year. Just weeks ago, Powell said inflation would be transitory. 3 teenagers are dead. 3 others remain in critical condition after a school shooting in Oxford, Michigan Tuesday that sent students fleeing.
5 gunshots nonstop, kept going, and then after that, I was out the building.
And I heard a second shot go off, and I just ran out the door, just ran.
Oakland County Michigan Sheriff Mike Bouchard says officers disarmed the shooter within 5 minutes of the first 911 call. What they don't know yet is what prompted it.
At this point, we don't know motive. He's not speaking to us, and his parents has refused us the opportunity to speak to him.
The sheriff says the suspect's dad bought the 9mm handgun late last week. 4 other students have non-life-threatening injuries. A teacher was also shot in the leg. America is listening to Fox News.
Hapaday, konnichiwa,
Patois, ciao. Enter for a chance to win the 76 Circle K World Cuisine Giveaway. Be one of 3 lucky winners to win a passport of free food from around the world at over 15 different local restaurants. Just stop by any 76 Circle K, purchase $35 or more in fuel to get an entry form. Drive by today and taste the world with 76 Circle K's World Cuisine Giveaway. Visit 76circlekguam.com for more details. Some conditions apply. Circle K, take it easy.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
A federal judge in Louisiana has issued an injunction temporarily preventing enforcement of a federal vaccine mandate on healthcare workers in most of the country, calling the mandate an erosion of our liberties, while acknowledging that his order and others will be appealed to higher courts. Another judge has blocked the mandate on federal contractors in 3 states.
The decision prevents the Biden administration from enforcing COVID-19 vaccinations for federal government contractors in Kentucky, Ohio, and Tennessee. The judge concluding President Biden likely cannot use congressionally delegated authority to manage the federal procurement of goods and services to impose vaccines on federal contractors and subcontractors. The lawsuit is one of at least 13 filed nationwide challenging the vaccine mandate. On Monday, a federal judge in St. Louis temporarily blocked the vaccine requirement for healthcare workers in 10 states. Steve Rappaport, Fox News.
The Supreme Court will hear arguments Wednesday against a state law in Mississippi that bans abortion after 15 weeks. That's 9 weeks less than the deadline established in the landmark Roe v. Wade decision. Mississippi's Attorney General Lynn Fitch telling Fox's The Story with Martha McCallum.
Abortion is not the answer. We should stop selling that false lie that that's the only choice to level the playing field, because it's not. There are so many choices and options, and so it's time to stop and reflect and have those decisions turned back to our states.
Abortion advocates argue the Mississippi state law limits a woman's right to choose. A decision from the justices likely won't come until near the end of the court's current term in midsummer. New York City says the first officially authorized safe havens for people to use heroin and other narcotics have opened at existing needle exchange sites in the city, calling them overdose prevention centers. Proponents say the facilities will save lives. Opponents say they essentially sanction people harming themselves. Federal law bans operating places for narcotics use. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
As we celebrate this holiday season, we reflect on the hardships of the past 2 years and remain grateful for the family and friends who share our journey and lighten our burdens. The team at Security Title is proud of the work we do to support ourselves and our families, to serve and care for our customers, and to give back to our community. May this season of joy and the new year bring happiness, good health, and prosperity to you and yours. Merry Christmas from all of us at Security Title.
Hey, let's go to Tango Theaters and watch a movie.
No way, I'm broke. How am I gonna buy snacks?
They have a combo special for the whole month of November called the G's for Giving Combo Specials. You can choose from 2 combos for just $13.75. G Combo 1 with a drink, popcorn, and candy, or G Combo 2 with a drink, hot dog, and chips.
Wow, okay, that sounds good.
A portion of the proceeds will be donated to the UOG Endowment Foundations for scholarships and programs.
Cool, it'll be my treat. I'll buy 2 combos.
Visit Tango Theaters and grab yourself a G Combo special during the whole month of November.
November.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
We buy a homeowner's policy and never give it another thought until something happens. Life brings changes, and our coverage needs can change. The smart thing to do is get the answers and level up our insurance to make sure we're totally protected.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
Guam Auto Spot has the best selection in Buick, GMC, Mitsubishi, and used cars like the 2021 Mitsubishi Mirage starting at $127 per paycheck. 0 down. Call 671-478-AUTO to take a test drive or get pre-approved online at guamautospot.com.
So here we are, tailgaters, back on the air after that big halftime show. Before halftime, we were talking with William Utah, who seems to be quite knowledgeable about hospital finance, TEFRA, and similar matters. And we had to let him go for a little while because of the halftime show. But William is back. Tell us everything we need to know about hospital finance, William.
Well, I've still studied myself on that, just being a hospital provider. I wouldn't consider myself a college educated financier on hospitals, but I do know some just because of my insights.
Enough apologies, William. Go for it.
Well, so I sent Jose the article there that I was talking about. It's written by Phil Leon Guerrero on December the 1st, 2021. It was updated an hour ago. And in the article, I'll skip down here to where he talks about that. Let's see here. It says, so I skip down to almost to the bottom of the article. It says, debts like a bond can be tax exempt under a federal law called the Tax Equity and Fiscal Responsibility Act. This statute requires a public hearing and subsequent approval by the applicable elected representative of a state or territorial government. GED Administrator Malene Mendiola explained Governor Leon Guerrero has the local authority to grant the approval and would make her decision based on feedback received during the hearing. Just 3 people provided testimony. All were from local elected offices, and most provided more questions than statements. And it looks like MSN really dug into them on it, asking a lot of questions as to what's going to happen that were not answered, it seems like. But back to my point that I was making was the statement that I made a couple weeks ago regarding GMH being turned, GRMC being turned into GMH. GMH is considered a Tax Equity and Fiscal Responsibility Act hospital. That's how it gets its tax exemption, is through that act. The same act that they're wanting to use.
I don't want to seem to be quibbling here, but Guam Memorial Hospital is a part of the government of Guam. Even if it were a private entity, it wouldn't be paying income tax because it never has a profit. It always runs at a loss. But go on with what you're saying.
Right, but they do have an exemption through this act. That's what they're. If you research it, you'll find that is their title as when they're in their tax status. However, GRMC is saying they're going to be, I guess, owned by this not-for-profit out of Delaware, but at the same time they're getting this tax exemption through this act that applies to rural hospitals that have less than 50 beds.
You mentioned that before the break, yeah.
So I'm not exactly sure where they're going with this. I'm like you. I want to see GRMC succeed. Guam needs a good hospital. They do. But I just, my insight, my gut feeling is that what is going on here is we're seeing the process of GRMC being converted into a government hospital.
When we talked last week, your thesis was that GRMC was going broke, and after it went broke, it would be taken over by the hospital, and we would move hospital operations out of our current building into that building. Remember that?
Correct.
Are you still sticking with that theory, William?
Well, this is along the same lines. However it gets to that point, the end, I guess in this case, the end justifies the means. Whatever they got to do to make it happen, they're going to make it happen, I guess.
Okay. Anything else you want to tell us about this, William?
No, that was just it. I just my insight was that that GRMC was going to end up becoming either GMH or I guess like GMH, and I think that's the direction that we're seeing things happen now, quite quickly, actually, quicker than I thought it was going to happen.
Yeah, well, let's hope that they don't resemble it in some of its not so nice characteristics, right, William? Which hospital did you work for when you were here?
GMH.
Okay. What can you tell us a little bit about your experience, or?
I worked in radiology.
Go on.
I was a contractor. My experience was, it was eye-opening. I'd never worked in a hospital similar to that prior, and I've been doing this since 1992, and that's long enough to see, have a lot of different experiences, and I was aggravated with the way things went there. It's a difficult place to work. I'll just say that.
Okay. You have an open microphone. Tell us whatever you want to tell us.
Well, I think that the people of for one thing, the people of Guam are great. Those are the best patients I ever had when I was there. I mean, that even better. I mean, way better than the patients that I had here in the mainland. Everybody is so appreciative of any kind of care that they can get. They're just happy to see that they're getting attention. Here in the mainland, patients complain about, even if they don't get a turkey sandwich, they're upset. There on Guam, the patients there are they're the best. They really are. They just want to be taken care of. And they deserve it. Guam's the tip of the spear, when it comes to the defense of this nation, and the people there deserve good medical care. And that's the thing that aggravated me there the most was the medical care that they were getting, to me, was not adequate.
Well, okay.
And that's why I've kept an interest in the island and what goes on there since I've left, which hasn't been that long ago. We just moved back here to Utah, and I really feel that they need a better hospital. They need a better situation, and if GRMC is the fit for making it the government hospital, then that's what it is.
Okay, William. Well, we'd appreciate whatever insights you can share with us, so feel free to call us anytime and tell us about the hospital. We'd appreciate it, because I don't think there are many people on the island that are really excited about Guam Memorial. To think that it's good. I think there was a sigh of relief when GRMC moved into town, because at least there'd be an alternative. So anything you want to tell us about GMH, we're all ears. So thanks a lot for calling, William.
You know, he didn't mention. You didn't mention was how did you like our water features whenever it rained?
I went all over that island.
No, I'm talking about in GMH.
Guam Memorial Hospital and Water Park.
And the water feature, because it's raining like the Dickens right now.
Well, yeah, I wanted to go outside and get a breath of fresh air as much as I could. Let's just say that. My mom taught me not to. If you don't have anything good to say, don't say it at all. But it's so frustrating because there's just so much to say about that place that is bad that it really pulls at your soul.
With all due respect to your mom, William, I've heard that. I've heard that all my life, et cetera, and I've seen so many things that went south because people who knew what was going on said, well, yeah, but I didn't want to say anything. And Jose knows exactly what I'm talking about.
Yep.
Yeah. So
and that was my problem too. I said things when I was there, and I filed reports that brought up safety issues. I brought up some serious safety issues. They actually gave me an award right before I left, yeah, we went our separate ways. They didn't agree with my insights or how I viewed things that were going on there.
Okay, William, so I look forward to future calls from Salt Lake City, okay?
Yes, sir. God bless you guys.
Good talking to you. See you later. Okay, so let's see. No break coming up here. I've got the legendary Simon Sanchez in the green room. Probably wants to talk about the power rates, correct, Simon?
Hey, good afternoon, Your Honor. Yeah, just to throw in some 2 cents. I just caught the tail end of some of the conversation, but I've heard it on other mediums, and Ray Gibson had an excellent interview with Pete Scrow, and I think you understand the issue. I didn't agree that this is a move to start to make GRMC become a government hospital. The private activity bonds, as you know, is allowed by federal and local law. And I did the first private activity bond for GITA in 1981 for housing. And again, it wasn't the debt of the government of Guam, right? It's a developer could use that money and take advantage of the tax exemption that gets created. If you create a public good, then you can qualify for these public private activity bonds, where a private lender lending to a private entity performing a public good certified by GITA and the governor can qualify for this. And so I sense that people are suspecting a lot more than I see. And from what I'm hearing on the private sector side, they created a nonprofit in order to preserve some of the advantages they have for other tax reasons. But the biggest reason was they're paying 7% interest on a $600 million loan, and they can get a 4% interest loan now through this private activity bond. And that debt service savings, 3% on $600 million, you can do the math. It's a nice chunk of change that helps the new GRMC, I forget what their new acronym is, but to continue to survive here. And the same group that sold the hospital has also been hired back to run it on behalf of this new nonprofit. And you can Google some of the owners, and they come from a background in the mainland, but it's not an unusual transaction. I've seen it before outside of Guam, and I've seen the use of private activity bonds on Guam, and that's really all it is a nonprofit is taking over for GRMC, showing a public good. If the governor says she agrees, then they can take advantage of this financing, which would save them quite a chunk of change. It doesn't mean GMH is going to run it. They're going to be run by this.
I would start out with the thought that perhaps may not be accurate, that the creators of the nonprofit are the same people that are running GRMC right now.
Well, that's who I thought it was, but because that's what I had heard, it was just a refi, right, on the jungle drums in the private sector. But as I'm reading the press releases that are going throughout all the different mediums, the original GRMC has sold. It's a subsidiary of GRMC Asia Philippines, the group that came out of the Philippines originally, and their subsidiary was actually the owner of the GRMC, and that subsidiary has sold to this nonprofit, and the nonprofit is hiring back the subsidiary to run it. But I don't believe there's common ownership. But that's something I haven't verified completely. But from at least what I saw from the press releases and some of the names mentioned, it does appear to be different owners. And that's something where I think Gita can be helpful, at least just clarifying, who are these owners? Not that it affects the transaction itself. This is a perfectly legal transaction. I know Congressman St. Nicholas expressed a concern, but this is private activity bonds are exactly what they are. They're private transactions that meet a public good and that qualify for tax-exempt financing if someone in the government certifies that that's the case. And as for who's running it, I don't believe for sure GMH isn't running it. This new nonprofit who has turned around, just as you said, and hired back the subsidiary that was running it all along. I believe Francis Santos and Mike Cruz are still going to be there, are still there today, as far as I can understand. So in terms of the operation,
you weren't listening to the program a little earlier, Simon.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just finished playing golf, but in the rain. Foolish me. Was there a change in the transaction that I'm not aware of?
Well, I have a source that told me that that they're no longer at the hospital.
Oh, Mr. Santos and Dr. Cruz?
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's news to me. And I just saw Francis yesterday, but I didn't ask him about it. So, okay, so maybe you have new information.
Well, as I say, it's a source. I'm not going to the bank on it. I didn't read it in the paper, but I got it from a member of the medical community who has always been accurate up until this point.
Okay. Well, that's where Gita and Governor can be more. They need to be more clear, about the transaction. And not that there's a risk to the public. There's no risk, but since they're using a tool in which the government has to take action, I'm with you about transparency and revealing all that you can, so that it quiets any concerns that there might be something untoward. Because as far as I can tell, I'm not aware of anything that's improper, but that's where Gita's disclosure could help in the process, and of course the sellers and the buyers could also help in the process. But at least the transaction, as I understand it, it's fairly straightforward. It's a refi to save a ton of interest on $600 million. So I just want to call it and throw that into you. And it's not. I don't see it as a movement that it's going to be run by Lillian Posadas and the board of the Guam Memorial Hospital. I'm like you. Those are two separate organizations. And as I read the press release, the buyer has hired the same subsidiary that was running it. Now, whether the same players in the subsidiary are still there, maybe you're hearing different information, and I haven't heard that. But at least from the article, the buyer is just hiring back the seller to run it, but they're the new owner. So just wanted to throw that in there if that's helpful to the discussion.
Well, your discussion, your inserts are always helpful to the discussion, Simon, so I really appreciate your calling in.
All right. Well, thanks for all you're doing. You keep me on my toes, that's for sure, as you should. But thanks for everything, and have a great Christmas, Your Honor. I'll keep listening through the month. Hopefully we'll get to interact, and maybe you and I can get together, break bread before the holidays and see each other.
I'm ready. Thanks again, Simon.
All right, Your Honor. Take care. You too, Jose. Thank you.
So long. So, interesting, different viewpoints on what's going on here. I tend to think that William, Utah, is reading something into the tea leaves that maybe really aren't there. But that's what makes talk radio so interesting, that we can test out different theories and different ways of approaching problems and gain different insights from one another. So let's see, I got somebody trying to get out of the green room here. I got a couple folks in the green room. I've got Tom Poole, who is a medical type, and Pete Scrow. Okay, wow, we got a cavalcade of all-stars here. So I'm going to go with Tom. Tom was just a minute or two ahead of Pete. And then after that, I'll get to you, Pete. So good afternoon, Dr. Poole.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon. I just wanted to lighten the mood a little bit. I always enjoy listening to Simon Sanchez. What a smart guy. But about BCG, about the name, I think it's the perfect name. And I wanted to hopefully clarify that a little bit, because BCG is not the organism that causes tuberculosis. BCG is the vaccine developed by two brilliant Frenchmen, so Frenchies should be proud, and it stands for the Bacillus of Calmette and Guerin. And Calmette was a physician, and Guerin was a veterinarian, so of course we can assume he was doing all the heavy lifting. But regardless, this is a vaccine that was made from the bovine tuberculosis, and so it's Mycobacterium bovis, as opposed to Mycobacterium tuberculosis, which is the human pathogen. And so what they did was they figured that they learned that they could take this bovine bacillus, tuberculum bacillus, and if they grew it in special medium, it would have no pathogenicity. And so it was a fantastic vaccine that really has pretty much eliminated what had always been called consumption. Now, we don't use the vaccine in the United States because our tuberculosis levels have always been so low that the side effects that you get from the vaccine were not thought to outweigh the risk of disease, which is perhaps the same sort of calculus we should be making on COVID-19. Regardless, as you pointed out, it's been used to treat bladder cancer and a lot of other things, and there's quite a lot of work that indicates that some of these BCG vaccines, the Japanese version especially, because everybody in Japan still gets BCG, most Asian countries, most countries in the world get it. Most everybody in Africa, if they get medical care at all, then they're getting BCG. And it's thought that's why these COVID-19, or it's postulated that that's why the COVID-19 levels have been so much lower in countries that were using that Japanese variant of BCG. So it's interesting, and in as much as it is one of the great vaccines in human history, then it's the perfect name for a medical group. So I just wanted to offer that, Judge.
Well, as usual, you're very informative. I think I knew everything that you're saying. I just forgot it, and just remembered the tuberculosis part and the bladder cancer part. It was a real close connection with the bladder cancer part. But
well, if this were horseshoes or hand grenades, you'd be in great shape, Judge. But that's why I just wanted to call in.
Well, I really appreciate it, Tom. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Bye now.
All righty. Okay, so BCG, it's not the bacillus, it's the vaccine named after a couple of Frenchmen. I suppose I can anticipate the next call after Pete Scrow. Afternoon, Pete.
Hi, Bob. How are you?
Doing great.
I just wanted to, there is an awful lot of misinformation going on. Francis and Mike Cruz have not been terminated at all. They are still with the hospital, and in fact, with respect to the nonprofit entity, Mike Cruz is been designated by the board of directors as the executive director. So they have not been terminated.
Well, that's good to know.
So I think Simon pretty much covered things, very accurately as far as how this whole financing goes. And the other thing I wanted to mention is there is no commonality of ownership between the nonprofit and the group that initially owned GRMC.
Okay.
So I simply just wanted to point that out for clarification purposes.
Yeah, I'm glad you did, because, in the absence of people coming forward with this information, guys like me are going to sit around and speculate. And
sure.
The speculation oftentimes turns out to be misinformation if it's not correct. That's why transparency is so important, and guys like you that are knowledgeable on the subject come forward. It would have been all right either for BCG or for the folks at GRMC to come out and make these clarifications themselves, instead of this news story popping up in the paper, $600 billion bond.
Yeah, I agree with you, Bob. In fact, I actually made a comment the other day that the press release that was sent out, should have included some of these things of what I'm telling you now.
Yes. Yeah, because, you see a big number like $600 million, that and nothing else makes people suspicious. What's going on here? Who's doing what to whom? What's the end game here? What kind of scheme is this? So this
is... The 600 million, Bob, is the 600 million is not the bond financing I actually talked about this on Ray's show earlier today. The total restructuring of the refinancing is because right now there's a conglomerate of Korean banks that are the current lenders of a current loan that has a rate of 7.1%. And with this new type of refinancing, the effective rate that's going to be fixed for 30 years is going to be about 4.1 to 4.2%. But out of the 600 million, 400 million of that is subject to the bond financing. The 200 million of that came by way of what we know as a sell leaseback arrangement, where this nonprofit bought the hospital building. It doesn't include the land, it doesn't include the equipment inside, and then there's going to be a leaseback of it. It's basically another way of getting financing without really doing it as a debt financing.
How does one go about buying a building without buying the land, Pete?
You just simply exclude it in the deed. And when you have a deed that, let's just say a deed will say lot such and such and such, including all improvements thereon, you simply just do the reverse.
Doesn't a building become part of the realty?
Not necessarily, no. And that's something that's very commonly done in the finance industry and recognized in the finance industry, that it doesn't necessarily run with the land. The wording of the deed controls the ownership and title of the property and what is on the property.
Well, that's interesting, Pete. Is there anything else you'd like to tell us about this transaction?
I think just the last point, Bob, is that there is absolutely no liability or risk exposure to the government of Guam or the taxpayers of Guam. This is a private financing. GITA is not the issuer of the bonds. The issuer of the bonds is a Wisconsin private entity that basically does nothing but be an issuer of bonds.
Yeah.
And you need to have an issuer of bonds before you can actually close on a bond financing. So that's just the final point I wanted to make, because there is no risk to the taxpayers of Guam.
This was not my concern from the very beginning, and I said at the beginning of the program that Congressman San Nicolas was able to play it for some earned media, but I didn't think there was really anything there. I was and am more interested in the mechanics of the deal, feeling a lot better now that you've explained some of the mechanics of how it all fits together, and it makes good sense to use that particular kind of financing to lower the interest on the outstanding debt. So,
yeah, I mean, kind of like Simon said, I mean, when you think about it, if you're looking at that amount of money and you're looking at a reduction by 3% interest, you're talking about a lot of money every year that can be reinvested back into the hospital to do things like expand it or add more services.
Right.
But thank you, Bob. I appreciate having me on your show to clarify this stuff.
Yeah, well, anytime, Pete. You're always welcome to talk about hospitals. You're the Guam guru when it comes to hospitals.
Well, thank you, sir. I enjoy your show.
All righty. So long. Okay, let's head for Wrigley Field. I'm tired of hanging around the hospital.
Santa's coming and things are looking up. Bank Pacific has rolled out Rudolph's favorite My Christmas loan with an annual percentage interest rate as low as 3.99% and up to $50,000. And with the new Bank Pacific contactless Visa debit card, you can have the flexibility of using your money when you want to, where you want to. My Christmas Loan contactless Visa debit card. Let's make Christmas merrier this year. Equal opportunity lender. Credit conditions apply. Merry Christmas from Bank Pacific.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Portions of the program brought to you by Nissan. Choose your favorite Nissan, and there's an abundance of Nissan automobiles to choose from. Rogues, Rogue Sports, Muranos, Kicks, Sentras, Leafs, Rogues, and then start talking about the deal they want to put together for you. Enjoy 0% APR, or your first 3 payments are on them. Just sign and drive away. Inventory limited, so don't wait. See Nissan Guam first. Wait, there's the fine print. I got to read the thing in fine print ease. On approved credit, 3 payments calculated, 5% APR, 60 months term, and based on the actual selling price of the vehicle only, not including down payment or any aftermarket products or accessories. See Nissan Guam for full details.
Here we are, Wrigley Field in Chicago. The 7th inning stretch. Just 2 more innings left on Tall Tales today. We spent a lot of time talking about the sale of GRMC, the financing, a little bit about Mike Cruz and Francis Santos, who, according to Pete Scrow, are still in charge. Pete Scrow shed a lot of light, exactly. Between Pete Scrow and Simon Sanchez, they gave us a lot of information that could as easily have come from Gita and from GRMC and from BCG instead of a really cryptic article.
Well, that brings up, I think, another factor, and this has to do with feelings, Bob.
Yeah.
But, you know, healthcare is what we're talking about here, these hospitals, and a part of looking for healthcare is confidence in your care, confidence in that structure or those doctors are going to be there. The same doctor you saw last week is going to be there again the next month or in a year also. So, you know, when GRMC was first being touted to us, we heard a lot about Guam Medical City, Medical City, the one that's in the Philippines, right? Uh-huh. Regional Medical City or something like that. So the thing that a lot of people took is this familiarity of a group that was going to be building a hospital on Guam. We don't know anything about this other group here. And there's people who are in open enrollment right now going, what does this mean for my health care? What does this mean for coverage? What does this mean for departments? Like, you remember there was supposed to be a touted, what is it called, birthing center or maternity ward at GRMC that never happened, never came to fruition. So those types of things are in the consumer's minds. I know the whole tax bond things can be a little bit over our heads or way over our heads, but the confidence in our healthcare is, I think, a lot of people have on their heads too, in their minds.
And here's the headline on today's Daily News. Big black letters, GRMC to be sold. Now, there's a lot to it. Perhaps they ought to hire someone to help them a little bit with their public relations, because this didn't come off very well. As we even had a caller here who said, "Hey, I'm signed up with Take Care, and that's supposed to send me to to GRMC. Is a new hospital going to a new ownership going to honor that contract?" So, yeah, they wrote it. The stories look like something they were going to submit to the Financial Times or Wall Street Journal or something instead of to a neighborhood newspaper.
And this public hearing is interesting. It happened yesterday.
Yeah.
I haven't heard, but I probably wasn't paying attention, but this is the first time I heard about it. Public hearing.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I agree, Jose. Okay, let's move on. Let's leave the hospital behind. I'm sure we'll be talking about it more the rest of the week. Next item on the card is Mika versus Us. And I got this from a news service called Raw Story. Yeah, I read a lot of stuff over on the left, like Raw Story, Counterpunch, WAPO, New York Times, the HuffPo. For a couple reasons. One, I like to have a contrast between the conservative stuff I read. Sometimes the truth lies a little bit in between, and I like to know what the other side is doing. So here's what we get from Raw Story concerning Mika Brzezinski and her new husband. Well, not so new husband, Joe Scarborough. Now, say 6 or 7 years ago, I used to watch that show every night, and I was always glad when we went off daylight saving time because it came on at 8 p.m. here. If you wanted to watch it in the States, if you're in Eastern Standard Time, you got to get up at 6 in the morning to watch Morning Joe. But they had Juan Williams, they even had Pat Buchanan for a while. So they had a good mix of liberal and conservative. And gradually the liberals fell away, and gradually Joe Scarborough, who was once upon a time a Republican member of the House of Representatives, is now a never-Trumper. And if they didn't have Trump to talk about, they'd have 3 hours of dead air every night. So here we go. Mika unloaded on Donald Trump voters and the Republican lawmakers who keep scraping bottom to get their attention. Now remember, this is Raw Story writing this. They're kind of like, good for Mika. She's getting him, right? Morning Joe host Joe Scarborough ripped Representative Lauren Boebert, who prefaced one of her culture war screeds by insisting she's a strong Christian. And Scarborough says, if you read actually the red letters in the Gospels, that would suggest that a, quote, strong Christian woman would actually act just the opposite of what we saw in that video. So perhaps leading with that was actually a tell, because I don't know. It's kind of like war heroes. I don't know war heroes that go around talking about their war heroes, talking about their being war heroes. They don't like to talk about it. I must say, can I get a witness here? They're strong, faithful servants of the Lord. They don't go around telling you that. And on top of that, you just ask, who is this? This is what I wonder. This is Scarborough's soliloquy. And then he goes on to say this. Who's the constituency for this? Who's the constituency for Marjorie, for M.T. Green, holding up AR-15s and having pictures of 4 women who are members of Congress, people of color? Who's the constituency for Representative Gosser guy or whoever the character out of Ghostbusters? What's the constituency for that guy doing a cartoon where he murders the image of a woman who's a member of Congress? That actually does more to speak ill of the person who's doing it. It speaks ill of a hell of a lot of constituents in their district. Scarborough interrupted to ask, missed part of this here. Brzezinski began to lead the program into a commercial break, which she gets a, when I used to watch it, I used to think it was funny. She loves to cut him off and go to a commercial. Brzezinski began to lead the program into a commercial break, but Scarborough interrupted to ask why she hadn't answered the questions he had posed in his commentary. Now, here it comes. This is why it's Mika versus us. And Mika says, okay, you want me to answer it? Fine, I'll tell you. It's Trump voters, okay? They're all like that. Miss Open Mind, right? Scarborough gently suggested that not all Trump voters like that sort of insulting bombast, but Brzezinski brushed him aside. Listen, you want me to talk? Brzezinski said. I'm going to talk then. Trump voters don't care that Donald Trump got the vaccine. They still won't. For some reason, there's this strange disconnect between these people and their constituents. Here it is. These people don't give a damn about their constituents. They don't care whether they live or die, let alone anything else. That's what holds them together. They're Trump supporters. It's a very twisted and cult-like. They follow hatred. They love it. They follow conspiracy theories, hatred, and they live and thrive on it. And that's what gets them up in the morning. And it's frightening. Now, if a conservative were to say the same thing, what would happen? They'd hang him up by his heels from a lamppost in the town square. But for her, it's okay.
Some conspiracies are more valid than others.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the reason I don't watch Morning Joe anymore. Morning Joe has lost his bearings. Mika is as insufferable as she always was. Mika had to be tolerated back in the day when I liked the show. If she had been Mika Bozalewski, no one would have paid any attention to her. The fact that she was Zigby's daughter, that was her ticket. Well, anyhow, that was that. Okay, next I've got Virginia versus Guam. And this came out of a paper called Virginia Politics, State of Virginia. My body, my choice, beyond the U.S. mainland. And here it goes. The U.S. Constitution grants all women the right to an abortion, but the fine print says otherwise. The U.S. territory of Guam currently houses a female population of 84,537. Yet, as of 2018, there are 0 abortion providers on the island. It costs women upwards of $1,000 and an 8-hour plane ride to access the service. The public health disparity is even more problematic because Guam has the second highest number of sexual assaults per capita in the country.
Stop, Bob. Why do they do this all the time? Correlate abortion with sexual abuse.
Yeah.
So in order to curb sexual abuse, let's just get rid of the children?
Exactly.
I don't understand them.
Exactly, yeah. Well, if you put all the pieces together, sexual assaults oftentimes are rapes. Rape is the sex act. Oftentimes a child is procreated. Therefore, we've got to have abortion freely available to everybody. Yeah,
that'll get rid of the problem.
Yeah, that'll do it. Perhaps, if you ran the numbers, a minuscule number of rapes result in a pregnancy, but you gotta cure the problem with a broad solution. Even though the right to reproductive freedom has been at the forefront of the American mainstream media coverage for the past several years, public discourse is centered around the rights of women living in the mainland. To achieve total reproductive justice, the abortion conversation must address the inequality from an intersectional approach, one that includes the bodily autonomy of women living outside of the mainland. So she's got to help us out here. This is a lady named Adina Mobin. Luckily, this past September, a federal court case removed the need for women to travel out of Guam for abortion pill prescription after several lawsuits by the American Civil Liberties Union. Several lawsuits, won. Guam is slowly but surely making legal progress in the right direction. The ruling introduces teleabortions, a remote method for women to connect with doctors where they can provide consultations over video conference. Still, this case illuminates the glaring absence of essential healthcare infrastructure in Guam and subsequently other U.S. territories that similarly lack autonomy and representation in the federal government?
It's because no doctor wants to kill unborn babies.
Exactly. Without just and equitable policies, women in Guam and other U.S. territories will never have affordable and accessible reproductive health resources. Killing an innocent unborn child is reproductive health service. The relationship between Guam and the U.S. federal government resembles that of a conservatorship dynamic, even though the residents of Guam are considered U.S. citizens. Considered U.S. citizens. They do not have the right to vote in national elections. However, voters caucus during presidential primary. Caucus. We don't have primaries, we caucus. The Organic Act allows for popular election of the governor and lieutenant governor who hold office for 4-year terms. Guam's local legislature is a unicameral body with 15 cent blah, 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 etc. The delegate talks about the delegate cannot vote on the final passage of legislation. The barring of self-determination and limited autonomy in the United States national governing bodies leaves Guam with little space to address policy issues, some of which are created and exacerbated by the United States itself. On Guam, about $3,180 compared to $6,690 in the States. That's insurance cost. Wait a minute. Let me skip over that. A federal insurance program targeted towards low-income individuals. The obstacle is that Medicaid is fixed, capped allotment to U.S. territories, meaning U.S. government is not technically mandated to fund Guam's Medicaid services past a certain threshold. The U.S. government has haphazardly provided for Guam's health care because U.S. territories funding is not an entitlement and not tied to the income levels or health care needs of the population. Though there has been little to no reform in how the federal government has dispersed crucial health care funds to the territories, grassroots activists in Guam and beyond have been committed to effecting change locally. As women of color in the U.S. mainland have championed the movement against anti-abortion policies, so have the women of color in Guam. Indigenous women from the island's most prominent ethnic community, the Chamorro, are leading life-changing projects to implement policies and laws that allow for comprehensive reproductive health care. I can't.
Yeah, this is amazing.
Yeah. Now, this comes from the state of Virginia, and it's by somebody named Adina Mobin. So you got to wonder, is this another pen pal of Julian Ogun or one of that gang? Okay, let's head for Churchill Downs, and when I come out of Churchill Downs, I'm going to be looking for Dr. Ron McMinch, and I expect I'll be able to find him.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
So here we are back in Churchill Downs for another home stretch here on Tall Tales. We got about 5 minutes to go. I can't think of a better way to spend that last 5 minutes than with Dr. Ron McNinch. Go for it, Ron.
Hey, half a day, Senator, half a day, Guam. Wow, this weather's incredible. I don't know. I'm just very. I couldn't believe it. I walked outside from the university. It was almost like dark by now, but and also I think because of the rain. Senator, I heard the discussion earlier about achote rice or red rice, and I'll tell you, it's my favorite way to eat rice, I think, and it's actually not specific to Guam. It's fairly common. It's a common cuisine in quite a number of places, and different people use it in different ways. And so I thought I'd just point that out really quickly. It's not a only on Guam thing in general, and that's a little bit of that conversation. And I was going to mention something about the hospital. Of all the things that GITA should be involved in when they have these special incentive programs, I think improving our healthcare system and contributing to our medical care is an absolutely wonderful use of that power. I think that particularly capital projects and things like healthcare infrastructure are really good, and if the owners of the hospital can do a better deal by leveraging their interest rates, and it is a fairly common practice in financing. I think that's a good way to go. Also, I was in the hospital earlier this year in September, and that's a very nice hospital. I couldn't believe just how well equipped it is, and how the wonderful staff they had there. I was just very impressed. I do hope also we can improve the conditions at GMH and work on those things. I think that ever since I've been here, this is like almost my 26th or 27th year, GMH has been a constant policy and political football or issue for everybody, and trying to address some of the issues with GMH. And in fact, the current GMH originally, I believe, and Senator, you were here well before me, it was originally owned by the Catholic Church, if I recall the history of it.
It was Medical Center of the Marianas, built by the Catholic Church, finished in 1975.
Wow. And so this model of having facilities go from either the nonprofit or not-for-profit into the pure government sectors, or it seems to be a model also. There are three types of public administration: pure government, not-for-profit, nonprofit, and really it's the relationship with taxes that really make most of the key distinctions between the three. But of all the things our government could try to encourage through incentive programs, I think improving our healthcare system and finding out ways that we can have a better quality health care system is
gotta go, Ron. Good talking to you.
Hey, we'll catch up later this week. Thank you, sir.
See you tomorrow. So long.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
The police officer has been killed in the line of duty. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. It happened in Rex, Georgia, about 20 miles southeast of Atlanta. Police are responding to reports that two people had been shot, were fired upon. Clay County officer Henry Laxon was killed. A second officer was wounded. Police returned the gunfire, killing the shooter. It appears to have started as a domestic disturbance. 3 students are dead at a Michigan school shooting in Oxford Township, Michigan, about 30 miles north of Detroit.
Police say a sophomore used a gun his father bought just
just last week. Oakland County Sheriff Michael Bouchard calling it an
unspeakable and unforgivable event.
He says the suspect isn't talking and they don't know a motive yet. But Bouchard says as 911 got over 100 calls on the shooting, officers went in.
As they were coming down the hall, they saw him and he put his hands up and they took a gun and took him into custody.
That gun still had several bullets in it.
Fox's Jill Nadeau reports the students killed were a 16-year-old boy and 2 girls, ages 14 and 17. 3 other students are still in critical condition. The Biden White House to announce tomorrow its strategy for the Omicron variant of the coronavirus. CDC Director Dr. Rochelle Walensky says new travel restrictions are being finalized.
This program allows for increased COVID testing for specific international arrivals, increasing our capacity to identify those with COVID-19 on arrival to the United States, and enhancing our surveillance for the Omicron variant.
The Washington Post reports a 14-day quarantine for inbound foreign travelers. Even vaccinated Americans is under consideration. Americans spent less on Black Friday and Cyber Monday. Overall spending on those 2 big shopping days down more than 1%.